Good evening, Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and good evening to the wider world. Thank you for watching this special edition of Grenada Matters. In fact, I should call tonight Grenada Really Matters. I ask you to join me now as I go through this very important information that probably a lot of Grenadians don't know. But all the information that I will be providing for you in this edition, this special edition, you'll be able to check the websites yourself. We'll go directly to the websites. So this is information about refugee status and asylum seekers on the island of Grenada, or anyone decided to become an asylum seeker in Grenada. You're probably going to hear a lot more about this via the media. In Grenada, you'll probably hear a lot more about it, but it is best to be informed. Knowledge is power, and once you've got knowledge and you've well read or well educated, you cannot be taken for a fool, and you're able to see the wood from the trees. So let me go to our first article, and this article you're looking at is let's get across to it. So the article is 10 facts about Grenada refugees. So you may or may not know this. You're going to know about it now. So the article here. Now check this out. Grenada is part of a small collection of islands in the Caribbean Sea near Venezuela. Due to the country's small size, Grenada refugees do not face many formal regulations and protections. The following 10 facts about Grenada refugees explains how Grenada handles its refugees, the improvements the government is making for refugees, and the future of refugees in Grenada. Grenada is not a party to the 1951 Refugee Convention. This convention served as the major legal framework for refugees as it defined the term refugee, outlined refugees' rights, and determine the legal obligation of states to protect refugees. The core principle is non-refoulement, which means that a refugee will not be returned to their country of origin if they are facing serious threats to their life or their freedom. The government of Grenada, too, has no formal policy for recognizing refugees. There is an open policy towards migrants which allows them to remain in the country without attaining refugee status. Additionally, the Grenada Constitution provides for freedom of movement within the country, foreign travel, and emigration. Grenada is a popular point for migrants because it allows for easy access to its neighboring islands and to South America. 4. Most refugees to Grenada come from other islands in the Caribbean. Grenada does not receive many asylum seekers, and as a result of the lack of formal policy regarding refugees, most asylum seekers are not documented. Surprise, surprise. 5. The Office of the United Nations High Commission of Refugees, UNHCR, determined that the only durable solutions for refugees in Grenada were voluntary reparations or resettlement in a third country. 6. Grenada's economy and conditions are not ideal for mass migration. Grenada was formerly an agriculture-dependent economy that in the last 40 years has become a service-oriented economy. Additionally, Grenada is very vulnerable to climate change and natural disasters, specifically hurricanes. Grenada has historically complied with refugees and has not violated the non-refoulement principle. In 2010, the government of Grenada agreed not to deport a family that was recognized by the UNHCR as refugees. This family was eventually settled to a third country. 8. Similarly, in 2011, Grenada recognized a refugee family that was also resettled to a third country. 9. In 2013, Grenada participated in a conference in conjunction with the UNHCR and other Caribbean countries called the Regional Conference on the protection of vulnerable persons in the mixed migration flow. This conference provided an open dialogue regarding migration in the Caribbean region. 10. The UNHCR predicted in 2014 that Grenada will soon see a surge in the number of asylum seekers. Since Grenada is small, the migrant flow has been overwhelming, which has allowed the Grenadian government to cooperate with migrants. As Grenada may soon expect an increase in asylum seekers, it is imperative that the Grenadian government begins to address the rights of Grenadian refugees and the country's ability to host a refugee population. Now, this article was written in 2017. You can check it out yourself. The Borgen Project. However, I've got some more documentation for you, which brings us up to 2019. So let me just bring this up for you now. Grenadians, knowledge is power. Okay, so let me just bring this information up for you. A StreamYard, and what we're doing is looking to our next article. So we'll bring this back here for you. And we'll get our next article up for you. All right. This article is in Ref World. So you can refworld.org. Again, the article or the documentation is in the description of this video. And we're going to be going there right now. So I'm not going to read the whole doc. I think it's about 5 pages to document, so you can read it in your own time. But I'll start reading it off to let you know, see what it is. So it's the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And this submission for a universal review in Grenada was the UPR, the 35th session. And that was the latest session was in July 2019. So this isn't something that was written in 2017, or it was written in 2019. July, okay, so not too long ago, and it was for the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights compilation reports. Above that, it says the submission by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So the United Nations are involved, and this is how they're involved, and this is what they've got. So this is the background information anyway. Grenada. Background information. Grenada, which consists of 8 smaller islands on the southern edges of the Grenadines, is not party to the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees or the 1967 protocol, hereinafter jointly referred to as the 1951 Convention, the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons, the 1954 Convention, or the 1961 Convention on the reduction of statelessness, 1961 Convention. Currently, July 2019, the country lacks a national refugee law, and the government has not established formal channels to provide protection for refugees or asylum seekers. Are you hearing me? Grenada, are you listening? The country's lack of national refugee law is concerning. This is from the UN. As Grenada's geographical location in the densely populated chain of islands in the Lesser Antilles inevitably makes the state a popular transit and destination point for regional cross-border movement and trafficking in persons. UNHCR has noted growing numbers of Venezuelans arriving and transiting through the Caribbean region, and consequently, Grenada is likely to see an increase in the number of asylum seekers. If you don't know already, there is a case currently going on, which we've mentioned on this channel, on Facebook and on YouTube, about asylum seeker currently in the prisons of Grenada. So if you want to know more about that, of course, you can go back and check that out, Asylum Seeker Grenada, and you can check it out on BWTM or Grenada Matters, and you can go into further details about that. Currently, all matters relating to asylum seekers and refugees in Grenada are covered by UNHCR regional office in Washington. You hear that? Because Grenada has not complied with the UN, they have stepped in and said, well, all matters concerning refugees and asylum seekers will be covered by the regional office in Washington, America. There are currently 4 mandate refugees and 1 asylum seeker in Grenada. Oh, there we go. There it is. That's the asylum seeker I was talking about. In the absence of national asylum and refugee legislation and procedures in Grenada, UNHCR conducts registration and refugee status determination, RSD, in the country and undertakes a search for durable solutions. Voluntary reparations and resettlement in a third country are the only durable solutions available present for refugees in Grenada. Basically, it means, from what I'm reading here, is that refugee that currently, or the asylum seeker who seeks asylum from another country, should be pushed onto a third country. That's what I'm reading it as. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm reading it as. So let's read achievements and positive developments. UNHCR welcomes the government of Grenada's engagement in the Caribbean migration consultations, including participations in regional meetings and workshops held in the framework of the CMC on matters of refugee protection, human trafficking, data protection and management, and human mobility in the context of disasters and climate change. The CMC was launched by Caribbean countries and territories in 2016 with the support of UNHCR. My mouse is playing up on me. Let's go further down. Okay. So we can get a zoom on this as well. That's better. That'd be nice. There you go. A bit bigger for you to read as well. International Organization of Migration, IMO, and serves as an ongoing regional forum for facilitating refugee protection and migration policies, discussions, and promoting coordinated rights-based and effective management of issues related to migration and forced displacement in the Caribbean. UNHCR commends the government's participation in the thematic workshops in 2019, such as the workshop on the consultation towards a framework for regional cooperation in human mobility in the context of disasters and adverse effects of climate change in the Caribbean, Port of Spain 2019, and the first and second meetings of the CMC Counter Trafficking Network, Port of Spain, April 2018, and Georgetown in March 2019. Okay, I'm going to just go through this a second. Let's go here, see here. Okay, in the state's reply to the second UPR cycle recommendation, Grenada accepted the above recommendations. The UNHCR commends Grenada for passing the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 34 of 2014 in the Parliament and its enactment on the 11th of June 2014. This is an act that gives effect to the United Nations Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the UN Convention against transnational organized crime. The protections outlined in the Act includes combating the trafficking of persons within or across the borders of Grenada, providing for the offence of, let's bring this down, trafficking in persons and providing measures to protect and support trafficked persons and for incidental and connected purposes. UNHCR encourages Grenada to extend these protections to all persons who are vulnerable to human trafficking and to recognize that there's frequently overlap with persons whose situations give rise to the need of international refugee protection. UNHCR recommends the victims of trafficking who express a fear of return to their home countries have access to asylum procedures to determine if they're in need of international protection. Okay. UNHCR recommends the positive steps taken by the government to comply with Article 7 of the Convention of Rights of the Child, CRC, which calls for registration of of a child immediately after birth for introduction of a bedside registration procedure with a view to ensure birth registration is completed in a timely and efficient manner, and the right for every child to be registered as a birth is respected. Yeah, whatever, let's move on from that. Let's get on more about the asylum stuff. Right, this is what we want here. You can read it in your own time anyway, but key protection issues, challenges, and recommendations. This is what we're talking about here. Issue number 1, protection of asylum seekers and refugees. How much protection do this particular asylum seeker we've got in Grenada and refugees in Grenada have? In response to a recommendation made during the first cycle of the UPI on Grenada to accede, whatever that word means, to the Conventions on Refugees and Stateless Persons, the government stated that the state will continue reviewing the possibility of ratifying the Refugee and Stateless Convention. Nonetheless, Grenada remains the only one of the 5 states in the Caribbean region that has not acceded, or probably accepted, to or joined to the international refugee instruments. Given the regional context and protection challenges, accession to the 1951 convention, my tongue, should be a priority. While Grenada has not intentionally or knowingly violated the principle of non-refoulement, greater effort to identify persons in need of international protection is necessitated given the prevalence of mixed movements in the Caribbean. Creating a national plan to identify vulnerable persons will reduce Grenada's chance of inadvertently violating the non-refoulement principle. UNHCR continues to encourage the government of Grenada to accede to the international instruments and develop formal national procedures for refugee status determination. Basically, it's get with the program, Grenada. You need to be joining us in supporting refugees and asylum seekers. As a non-part of state party to the 1951 convention, Grenada has not adopted any domestic procedures for conducting refugee status determination. UNHCR has therefore taken responsibility for determining the refugee status of asylum seekers in Grenada. In other words, they haven't yet joined with the UN in their recommendations, so they're taking control of the situation. Accession to the 1951 Convention, establishment of the national legal framework, which will provide a clearer basis for the government to provide refugees with international protection. Okay. UNHCR is prepared to provide support to the government of Grenada to develop a national refugee policy, including the drafting of national refugee legislation. UNHCR remains ready to provide training and capacity building services to government staff, civil society members, and academics in order to strengthen its capacity to manage mixed movement flows and assist persons in need of international protection. So, the recommendations by the UN. Basically, join to the 1951 Convention and 1967 Convention. This is what is recommended to the government of Grenada. Adopt national refugee legislation and develop administrative regulations, policies, and procedures. Develop a national refugee status determination procedure and build the capacity of government officials to successfully undertake refugee status determination with UNHCR's technical support. And facilitate full and open access to asylum procedures for persons who have expressed a fear of return to their country of origin, and to ensure non-refoulement of all persons in need of international protection. Very, very interesting stuff here. Prevention of statelessness. Let me read this. This could be quite interesting. Let's read this a little bit. I'll go on to this one, read the whole thing. But Grenada is not a state party. We've read that. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. The Constitution and the Citizenship Act regulates issues regarding nationality. The Constitution incorporates jus soli and jus sanguinis provisions. If I've butchered that, my apologies. Provisions in the determination of who is a Grenadian citizen. Citizenship can be obtained by birth in the territory or by the virtue of descendant from a Grenadian mother or father citizen. Okay. However, some provision of a Citizen Act may not be in line with the international standards of preventing statelessness. For example, the provision contained in Article 9 of the Citizen Act, which refers to situation in which persons may be rendered stateless as a result of deprivation decision, go beyond the exceptions allowed for under Article 8 of the 1964 Convention. Reunification of Grenadian citizenship may pose an additional problem in the case where a person affirms to be the best of his or her knowledge that he or she will acquire the nationality of another country but fails to acquire such nationality which he or she would require, which would render the persons at risk of statelessness. Okay. Finally, although Article 20 of the Registration of Births and Deaths Act regulates the information to be provided to the authorities respecting the findings of newborn children, there is no specific provision dealing with the issue of nationality founders. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to go any more into this. The article is there to be read. It's all there. So Grenada currently in 2020 still have not joined the convention, have not followed protocol as yet, have not taken on the recommendations. So therefore, the refugee that is in the site marriage correction, or asylum seeker that is in the prison cell of Grenada at this minute in time, his situation is going to be very interesting. How that develops, and also other refugees that will be coming through the island, how they will be handled. Grenada at the moment have not followed the recommendations of the UN, so we'll have to wait and see. So that's the information for you there, Grenadians, and for the wider world. I hope you found that of interest. Again, the articles are on our YouTube channel, BWTM Online. You can see it there. The articles are also, you can click on the articles also on the Grenada Matters page, and you can also click on the BWTM Online. So feel free, click on it. Please share this information. As I said before, it would be of no surprise with the current state with the asylum seeker in Grenada at the moment. Of course, government's going to want to do the best they can to cover up their weaknesses or their shortfalls, and the whole blame game begins. But ultimately, you've seen it yourself in the article here that the government of Grenada need to comply with the UN. At the moment, it is Washington that's making the decisions. So they're saying, right, the only island in the Caribbean. Very interesting. All right, that's it. Take care.